This is one of my favorite stories. But believe me, as I'm telling you this, you won't be able to guess what happens next or how it will end. I want everyone to listen carefully to this story. This incident happened when Polly was 19 years old. Polly is someone with a sixth sense, because when she was just 6 years old, she nearly drowned and stopped breathing for a while. It could be said that she died and then came back to life. Since that near-death experience, she had been able to see strange things from childhood up until now. At that time, she worked as a factory worker at a certain factory. The incident occurred on February 14th, which happened to be Valentine's Day. On that day, Polly went to work as usual, but she stayed later than usual because she worked overtime, leaving around 9 p.m. She decided she didn't want to go home right away and wanted to ride her motorbike to the night market to get some food to bring back home. While she was riding to the market, she suddenly lost consciousness and blacked out, causing her motorbike to crash. She lay unconscious on the side of the road. Fortunately, Polly wasn't driving very fast at that time, only about 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. The next thing she knew, she woke up in the hospital. When she opened her eyes, she saw her father, who was the first to visit her. Her father asked, "Polly, do you recognize me?" Her father asked because he was afraid she might not remember him, fearing she might have brain damage. Polly felt a bit dizzy but still recognized him and nodded, saying, "Yes, I do." At that moment, she had no idea why she was in the hospital. But as time passed, Polly began to regain her awareness. She checked her body for injuries and found that she was covered in scrapes and bruises, with 8 stitches on her head. The worst part was that she had a fractured skull. Her condition was quite serious, so the doctor advised her to stay admitted in the hospital for 7 days. Out of curiosity, Polly asked her father, "Dad, what happened to me? Why am I here?" Her father explained, "A rescue team contacted me and said you had an accident and I needed to come to the hospital immediately. They told me that Polly had a crash and some locals found her. They quickly called the rescue team to check on you. When the rescue team arrived, they asked about your condition. At that time, you were conscious and could answer all their questions. However, Polly now couldn't remember anything from that time. There was a moment when her father told her about what happened, which surprised Polly. The rescue team had told her father that when they arrived and spoke with Polly, they asked Polly, 'Do you have a relative's phone number? Contact them immediately.' Polly nodded and said she would call her mother. She made the call and a woman answered on the other end. Polly said, 'Mom, I miss you. Mom, I miss you.' And then she started crying. During the call, she only kept saying that she missed her mother. The rescue team tried to get her to tell her mother about the accident and their location so her parents would be informed. But Polly refused to say anything else, only repeating, 'Mom, I miss you.' The rescue team then tried to take the phone to speak instead, but the call was disconnected and the phone screen locked. Polly then lost consciousness. The rescue team didn't know what to do next. So, they took a photo of Polly to post on the local Facebook page to contact her relatives or acquaintances. Fortunately, someone who knew Polly saw the post. The rescue team was then able to contact Polly's father, who came to see her. Meanwhile, Polly was taken to the hospital. The story then moves to the present, during Polly's first night recovering in the hospital. While she was sleeping, she felt as if someone was standing on her chest. This person seemed to be a young woman around Polly's age, about 19 years old, wearing a factory uniform identical to the one Polly wore at her workplace. Although her face wasn't clear, Polly was certain it wasn't a human due to her strong sixth sense. As the woman stood on Polly's chest, she said, "Why didn't you just die? Why are you still alive? I miss my mother." Polly didn't understand what this meant, but she was terrified. She screamed loudly, which prompted the nurse to rush to her bed and ask if she was all right. Polly, still in shock, could only stammer incoherently. The nurse tried to calm her down and told her to get some rest. Given the situation, it was impossible for Polly to sleep, so the nurse administered a sedative through her fore, causing Polly to fall unconscious. The next morning, when her father came to visit, Polly recounted the previous night's events to him. Her father reassured her, saying, "Don't worry too much. It might have been a dream or just your mind playing tricks on you because you've had a head injury. Your brain might be a bit affected right now." Hearing this, Polly didn't say anything further. During the 7 days Polly was hospitalized, she encountered that woman every day. The woman's demeanor varied with each visit. Some nights, she stood at the foot of Polly's bed, pointing at her. Other times, when Polly returned from the bathroom, she found the woman lying in her bed. On some days, the woman sat astride Polly, making it difficult for her to breathe. Each time she appeared, she would say only one thing: "Why didn't you die? I want to go home. I miss my mother." This happened every day for 7 days. On the 6th day, just before Polly was due to be discharged, the woman repeated her usual phrase, but this time with more anger in her voice and a more furious expression. "Why didn't you die? I want to go home. I miss my mother." Summoning her courage, Polly responded, "Why are you doing this? What did I do to you? I don't know if our fates are connected, but why must we torment each other like this? Please stop, or it will only bring more sin upon you. Once I leave the hospital, I will make merit for you." After Polly was discharged from the hospital, she made merit and offered donations to the woman who had passed away. At that time, she didn't know who the woman was, but she focused on her image and dedicated the merit to her. Polly wanted to uncover the truth about what she had experienced, so she asked around the area where her accident occurred. She found a food stall nearby and asked the staff there, "Was there anything unusual on the day of the accident?" The staff member replied, "Oh, you mean the day when there were lots of rescue vehicles? I don't really know, but I remember a woman riding a motorcycle with another woman sitting behind her. Suddenly, the passenger covered the rider's eyes with her hands, causing them to crash right in front of me. I was the one who called the rescue team, but I didn't see much else because we had many customers that day." Hearing this, Polly was shocked and scared, wondering what exactly she had experienced. But there was one thing Polly remembered vividly. Her father had told her that the rescue team had asked Polly to call her parents. Polly called her mother and cried, saying, "Mom, I miss you. I miss you so much." However, Polly's mother had no idea about the call. She only found out when Polly's father later informed her. This made Polly wonder who she had actually called that day. She decided to check her phone again to see whose number she had called. It turned out to be a strange number, one that wasn't saved in her contacts. She decided to call that number. The first time she called, no one answered. She called a second time, but still there was no answer. Polly then thought to herself, if this number is somehow connected to something or someone that needs her help, let there be an answer this time. So, she decided to call a third time. Turned out that when Polly called, someone actually answered. On the other end was the voice of an elderly woman. As soon as she answered, Polly said, "Hello, may I ask whose number this is?" The woman replied irritably, "Well, who are you calling?" Polly explained, About a week ago, this number called me, right? The elderly woman confirmed. Yes, this number called. It just kept saying, I miss Mom. I miss Mom. Even though I've never known you. Despite the woman's irritated tone, Polly tried to remain as calm as possible. She then asked, I'm sorry, but do you have a daughter? I really want to know. Maybe there's something I can help with, even a little. After a moment of silence, the woman's voice began to tremble as if she was about to cry. She said, I have one daughter, Nina. She died 5 years ago. Polly then asked, how did your daughter die? At this point, it seemed like the woman didn't want to answer, but Polly persisted, wanting to know the answer. The elderly woman finally explained that her daughter had an accident. She was riding her motorcycle to buy something when she crashed and died instantly. Hearing this, Polly thought, wow, this is just like the accident I recently had. So Polly asked, where did your daughter have the accident? The elderly woman then recounted everything in detail. In summary, her daughter had died at the same place where Polly had her accident. What was even stranger was that Nina worked at the same factory as Polly and was born on the exact same day, month, and year as Polly. Polly asked the elderly woman where she lived, and she replied that she lived in Surin province. She explained that her family couldn't afford to bring her daughter's spirit back home. Her husband had passed away, and she had only one daughter, who had also died. Polly began to think that perhaps Nina's spirit was lingering at the place where she died, waiting for a replacement to be reborn. Despite this unsettling thought, Polly felt sympathy for both Nina and her mother. After the conversation ended, Polly brought up the matter with her friends at the factory, asking if such an incident had ever happened before. Her friends confirmed that it indeed had. It was once a major news story in the factory, but the event had happened a long time ago and had faded from memory. However, when the incident involving Polly occurred, the story resurfaced and was talked about again. After Polly had an accident, the factory granted her a 1-month medical leave to recover. At that time, it was unclear what Polly was thinking, but she decided to use her days off to travel to Surin province to visit the mother of someone named Nina. One day before she embarked on her journey, Polly prayed to Nina's spirit, saying, I allow you to inhabit my body and take me to Surin province. I'll take you home. At that moment, Polly felt scared, but she thought positively, wanting to help. She believed that if she didn't take Nina's spirit to Surin, the spirit might follow her everywhere, making Polly's life uneasy and paranoid. At first, Polly had no idea how to get to Surin. She didn't know which bus to take or where to get off. However, when the time came, she instinctively knew what to do. At that moment, she felt that someone named Nina had indeed inhabited her body. When she arrived at the bus station and was waiting for the bus to depart, Polly had the sudden thought of buying a set of lottery tickets. Normally, Polly never buys lottery tickets, but that day something compelled her to do so. After purchasing the tickets, she boarded the bus to Surin province. Upon arriving in Surin, she had to take another vehicle, minibus, which would drive into the small village. The area was very remote. At that time, Polly didn't know exactly where she was going, but she felt incredibly happy to be there. After getting off the minibus, she had to walk further into the village. The village was very rural and remote, and she finally stopped in front of a small house. Actually, she wasn't even sure if she should call it a house because it looked more like a small wooden hut, probably self-built and patched up by the villagers. If it rained, the roof would definitely leak. When she arrived at the house, she saw an elderly woman who seemed to be around 60 to 70 years old, cooking rice. Suddenly, Polly felt an overwhelming urge to hug this old woman. So, she decided to walk up to her, hugged her and said, "Mom, Mom, I'm back. I missed you so much." At the same moment, the elderly woman was startled and jumped in surprise, wondering who was hugging her and calling her Mom. She said, let go, why are you hugging me? I'm not your mom." Polly replied, "Mom, it's me, Nina. I missed you. I've come back to you." Polly was aware of everything, but she couldn't control herself. It was as if Nina had truly taken over her body. After the elderly woman heard Polly say, "Mom, it's me, Nina," she froze and then turned to look at Polly. Immediately, she started crying and hugged Polly, saying, "Nina, is that you, my daughter? How have you been? I've missed you so much." At that moment, Polly began to cry as well, seemingly automatically, and said, "I missed you too, Mom." After that, the elderly woman led Polly into the house. The elderly woman took Polly into the house and provided her with some food and water. However, as soon as Polly drank the water, she fainted. When she regained consciousness, she found the elderly woman fanning her and giving her smelling salts. When Polly opened her eyes, the elderly woman asked, Nina, are you all right, dear?" Polly responded, "It's Polly. My name is Polly." The elderly woman said, "Oh, Polly." Her face looked a bit sorrowful, but she smiled at Polly and said, "Thank you so much for bringing Nina back home." At that moment, Polly regained control of herself. Everything felt like her own again. Suddenly, she started crying because she felt immense sympathy for the elderly woman. The elderly woman also began to cry, feeling the sorrow of missing someone who would never come back. After that, they talked, and Polly learned that the elderly woman was penniless and had no relatives. Her husband had passed away, and her daughter had also died. This left her struggling to survive alone in a small hut. She didn't have much work to do each day and relied on the elderly allowance from the government, which was only 600 baht a month, certainly not enough to live on. She had to gather vegetables by the roadside to sustain herself. On lucky days, villagers who were harvesting rice would hire her to help in the fields, giving her a small amount of money. It was just enough to get by day. Upon hearing this, Polly felt deep sympathy for the elderly woman. She decided to give her a sum of money which wasn't much, about 3,000 baht, as that was all she had with her. She helped as much as she could. After that, they said their goodbyes. Polly traveled back to Nonthaburi province. Once she returned home, she resumed her normal life until the day of the lottery draw. It turned out that Polly had won the third prize with 15 tickets, amounting to over 20,000 baht in prize money. She thought that perhaps this stroke of luck came from helping the woman named Nina get back home and assisting the elderly woman. After that, she never encountered any more unfortunate events like before.